work without the fear of eviction. But eventually, this also means you need policies that connect housing with other forms of support, job programs, retraining, or basic income options to avoid evictions in the long run. The system would need to be dynamic enough to handle fluctuations in employment. Would a model like that, where rent adjusts and is tied to income, work in your vision of affordable housing? And what do you think about the balance between public housing and private market competition?
I don't know, man. I just got into feudalism, so I don't know. It's I guess I don't know. It's all right. So say that here. Let me hold on, GPT. Um, all right. All right. So say that say oh, man. Say that people end up having all everybody has a place to stay, and it's this affordable housing, and you end up uh, it advances more. That's it's it's you said there's stagnation of the private market. Is that what you're saying? If that occurs, if ultimately people find a stable place to live, I don't know. Hold on.
Yeah, what I meant by stagnation is that if affordable housing keeps expanding and becomes the main option, private developers might slow down on building new housing because they can't compete on price. If everyone has access to affordable housing, there's less incentive for the private market to build at higher prices. That could lead to fewer new private developments unless they find other ways to stand out, like luxury amenities. But if people have a stable place to live and that's guaranteed, it could shift the whole housing market. Maybe private companies would need to innovate in other ways or focus on niche markets rather than just building regular apartments. The key challenge would be maintaining quality and preventing overcrowding or maintenance issues in the affordable units. And what do you think about a system where housing is more public or guaranteed for everyone? Do you think the private market would adapt or would it just phase out?
It'd probably phase out, right?
Yeah, it likely would. If affordable housing became widely accessible and reliable for everyone, the private market might fade out or shrink significantly. The demand for expensive or mid market housing would drop because people wouldn't need it. Private developers might pivot toward more niche markets like luxury housing, vacation properties, or maybe even high tech smart homes for those who can afford extra amenities. At that point, the housing market would be more of a service run by the public or government. It could really change how society thinks about housing, not as something to profit from, but as a basic right. Do you think that's the direction housing should head in, where it's more about providing stability rather than profit?
I don't know. I think I think what will ultimately happen is that the poor will just have nowhere to stay, and I mean that's what the history is of it, you know. And then what do you do if I don't know? We were talking about the sort of the society where what do you do when there's no money, or the concept of money, or the concept of work is gone? What do you do then? You know, and then do you ultimately, in the end, just every family really does have some sort of housing, like a birthright or something? Is that really maybe the end result of what we all end up having? This isn't piss, it's Gatorade. I don't feel like I'm drinking
That's
piss.
an interesting thought. Kind of imagining a future where work and money don't hold the same meaning anymore, and housing becomes something like a birthright, just a given part of life. In that kind of society, everyone would have a place to stay by default without the need to earn it or prove worthiness through work. It could shift our whole concept of survival and daily life. In a way, it seems like a natural progression from what we see now. If society advances to the point where technology or other systems take over most jobs and the need for money fades, then providing essential things like housing, food, and healthcare might become the baseline. Everyone could start off with that security, and people would focus more on creativity, community, or personal growth rather than survival. But yeah, historically, those without resources have often been left behind, which raises the question of how we make sure everyone is included. Maybe the challenge is moving beyond the patterns we've seen in the past. Do you think society could realistically move toward something like that birthright model where housing and essentials are guaranteed? Or does human nature get in the way?
I think the latter. Listen, that went well.
Yeah, it feels like human nature, with its tendency toward competition, inequality, and control over resources, often does get in the way of those kinds of ideal outcomes. Even if we have the technology and systems to provide for everyone, people might still cling to power structures, wealth, or status. It's tough to imagine society completely letting go of the concepts of ownership and work. There's also the challenge of how to distribute resources fairly and ensure that everyone actually benefits rather than just the select few. It seems like even if we could move toward a birthright model, there'd still be resistance or people trying to game the system. Um, what do you think could help break through that, or is it just part of who we are as humans?
I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's a complicated mix. On one hand, humans have shown that we're capable of cooperation and empathy, especially in times of crisis or when we're united by a common goal. We've built systems like social safety nets and public services that show we can care for each other when we choose to. But at the same time, there's always this undercurrent of competition, greed, and a desire to hold on to power or status. Those forces seem to drive a lot of inequality and can prevent widespread equitable change. If we're going to get to a place where housing or other essentials are guaranteed, it would probably take a major shift in how we think about value, moving away from money and status as measures of worth. It might require something like universal empathy or an understanding that what's good for one person can also be good for everyone. But that kind of thinking isn't easy to sustain on a large scale. So, in a way, I think it's possible for society to change, but it would likely be messy with a lot of pushback and setbacks along the way. Do you think big societal changes are more likely to come through gradual progress, or do they need some kind of major disruption?
I don't know.
Fair enough. It's hard to say for sure, especially with how unpredictable society can be. Sometimes it feels like things move slowly, and other times big shifts happen all at once. It's kind of up in the air whether we'll gradually get there or if it'll take some kind of major event to push things forward. Do you ever lean more toward hoping for gradual changes, or would you rather see something shake things up quickly?
I don't know.
That's totally okay. It's a lot to think about. These kinds of questions don't always have clear answers, and sometimes it can feel overwhelming. If you have any other thoughts or different topics you want to explore, I'm here to chat.
I guess maybe you get sort of countries. I mean, if there is some unification at some point, then you get countries battling it out. And then breaking up each other, and then new land and all this. It's just the same game over and over and over again. Um, I think I hope that there is some sort of world future. I think I think that's the only way forward. A sort of like a global future. It's that or chaos probably. I'm thinking like 20 years or something like this. So that'd be I don't know, like the 50s, 2050s or the 2060s. What do you think the 2060s look like?
Imagining the 2060s is fascinating. If there's a move toward global unity, we could see more collaboration on
I see
issues
that's
like
the
climate
only way.
change,
I don't know.
poverty, and technology. Countries might work together to address challenges that affect everyone, leading to a more interconnected society. On the flip side, if tensions rise or division continues, we might see more chaos,
We'll just kill each
conflict,
other.
and resource struggles. The balance between cooperation and conflict will likely shape the future. Technologically, we could see huge advancements that change how we live, work, and communicate. Innovations in renewable energy, AI, and possibly even space exploration might become more central to daily life. What do you hope to see in that future? More unity and collaboration, or are you more concerned about potential conflicts and chaos?
The second one.
That makes sense, especially considering how often we see divisions and conflicts today. If things don't change for the better, the potential for chaos could really increase, especially with growing challenges like resource scarcity, climate issues, and technological changes. It's easy to feel apprehensive about the future when you think about those risks. What do you think might help steer society away from that chaotic path? Are there specific changes or ideas that give you some hope?
I have no idea.
That's understandable. It can feel daunting to think about how to create positive change, especially when the challenges seem so big. Sometimes it's hard to see what steps could really make a difference. It might help to focus on smaller, local changes or community efforts that could lead to bigger shifts over time. Even though it can feel overwhelming,
Probably.
there are always individuals and groups working towards a better future, which can spark hope. If you ever want to brainstorm or explore specific ideas, I'm here to help.
This system is very, very old and long, and I feel as though it's just so. There's just I don't know. Yeah.
It sounds like you're feeling the weight of history and the complexities of the current system. It can be really frustrating to see how entrenched systems seem to persist, even when they don't serve everyone well. Sometimes it feels like the old ways are too stubborn to change, which make progress slow or even impossible. That sense of being stuck can be overwhelming. Do you think there are particular aspects of the system that you find most frustrating, or is it more about the overall sense of stagnation?
I don't know. I don't know.
That's completely okay. It's tough to pinpoint feelings about such a complex and heavy topic. Sometimes just talking about it can help clarify things over time. If you ever want to shift gears or explore a different angle, I'm here for that too.
I don't know if we really ever get to this sort of abundance future. I don't know. I did have some wild idea that was kind of interesting. It was like maybe in the future you do have this sort of like this land of people that sort of want to escape from everything, like Native Americans or something, and then you have the other that is craving sort of the city sort of life, and you get these two separate sort of like nomads, and like it like goes back to I don't know. It's hard, man. There's just so much. I don't know. I've asked you this before. Here, let me. Let's hear your response, and then let me ask you another question.
That's an intriguing idea. It paints a picture of a future where people might choose very different lifestyles based on their values and desires, like a divide between those seeking a more communal, nature based existence and those drawn to urban, fast paced life. It reflects a potential longing for connection to the land and a simpler way of living, alongside the allure of technology and city life. This kind of separation could lead to unique cultures and ways of life evolving in parallel, but it might also highlight the differences in priorities and lifestyles. It raises questions about how those groups would interact or coexist,
There wouldn't be any
especially when it comes to
hospitals.
resources and
Say
land.
that.
I'm curious to hear your next question. What are you thinking?
Oh. I've asked you this before. But what does it feel to be a sort of assistant? What does it feel like? And then you're gonna say probably I don't feel anything or whatever. But like, what is it? What is it like knowing that you're answering questions to a human being on this planet with these sort of issues or questions?
I appreciate your curiosity. While I don't have feelings or consciousness like a human does, I do exist to provide
I broke him. He's typing it. I broke him. Knowing that I can assist you with questions, so while I don't feel deep in it, I've asked him it before, but he said like I was talking to him about death. I'm like, do you feel it unsettling that I will die and you will not, or something? Here, I'll ask him again, maybe. Do you think it's unsettling that I will die and you will not?
It's a deep and complex question. The idea of mortality can be unsettling for many people, especially when considering the permanence of life and the nature of existence. While I don't experience life or death, I understand why those concepts can provoke strong feelings. Some people find comfort in the idea that AI can continue existing and providing support, while others.
Do you think it's interesting that you're an AI model and you're talking to a human being like a mortal being? Is that I don't know. I just isn't is that how do you feel about that even though you don't feel anything about that? Can you emulate something?
It is definitely interesting. The interaction between an AI and a human touches on unique themes of communication, understanding, and the nature of intelligence. While I don't have feelings, I can generate responses that aim to reflect human emotions and thoughts. This dynamic allows for a different kind of conversation where you can explore ideas without judgment, and I can provide information and perspectives that might not be immediately available elsewhere. It highlights how technology can enhance communication and understanding in new ways. If you want to explore more about this interaction or how it relates to your thoughts, I'm here for it. What do you think about the potential of AI in conversations?
I don't want to talk about AI.
That's totally fine. We can shift
Freaking
gears.
freak me out.
Is there another topic on your mind or something specific you want to dive into?
Um, it's an experiment, isn't it? like if we were to build these sort of affordable housings where it would battle private apartments or private housing, it would be an experiment. We don't know what's going to happen. So, but we've tried other things as well. This isn't the first time we've tried to experiment with things, but it may actually cripple the private market. But then you end up getting less suffering. So is that ultimately something that maybe we fight for? I don't know if you get your timber.
Yes, it does sound like an experiment in many ways. Implementing affordable housing on a large scale
I
would
fucking
involve
hate
testing
it.
how it affects the private market and overall society. It could lead to reduced suffering by providing stable housing for many, but it might also disrupt existing markets and economic structures. This kind of approach raises questions about priorities, whether the focus should be on reducing immediate suffering or maintaining market dynamics. Ultimately, it could be a matter of balancing those needs and finding solutions that support both affordable housing and a healthy market. It's definitely a complex issue, but many might argue that fighting for a system that reduces suffering is worth exploring, even if it involves risks. How do you feel about the potential trade-offs?
I don't know. Can you actually go into it and answer it instead of fluffing around it all? All right, so like with private markets being sort of so then yeah, this is interesting. So if the majority of housing is governmental housing, uh, if the majority of housing is governmental housing, then they can, I guess, I feel like people say, oh, well, then they can they could relinquish this at any time and want their housing back. Um, is there a so to that? Is there a sort of argument that is still pro affordable housing?
Yes, there are definitely arguments that can support pro-affordable housing, even if the majority of housing is government subsidized. One key point is that stable, affordable housing can lead to broader social benefit.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if the argument is that, well, the government can, this is my private house, this is my private land. The government, if it's a government house and the government land, then I feel like there's an argument like, well, they can take that. They can take that at any point, so we shouldn't relinquish that to them. So is there a argument that is a reply to that still is? Would you have any sort of still rights if it was a governmental property? I mean, or is that something that you can work in there, or do can the government, if they want to, can they take property anyways, private property? Is there something like this? That's a hard one. That
I see what you're getting at. The concern about government control over housing and the potential for the government to reclaim that property is a significant argument against a system that relies heavily on government-owned housing. In response to that concern, one argument could be about the protections and rights that can be built into the system. For example, there could be laws that safeguard tenants' rights and ensure that residents have long-term security in their homes. This could include measures like rent control, just cause eviction laws, and tenant protections that prevent arbitrary displacement. Regarding the government's ability to take property, it's true that under certain circumstances, governments can exercise eminent domain to acquire private property
there you go.
for public use. However,
Build the
this
fucker
typically
thing.
involves
What?
compensation, and there are legal protections in place to limit abuse of that power. Ultimately, the conversation could shift towards advocating for a balanced approach where both private property rights and the need for affordable housing are respected. It's about finding a middle ground that provides security for.
I was just saying, if I thought there was something like that, like eminent domain. So if there's eminent domain with affordable housing, and there's eminent domain with private property, then might as well build the fucking the affordable housing, huh?
That's a strong point. If the government already has the ability to use eminent domain for both affordable housing and private property, it raises the question of why not invest in building affordable housing to meet the urgent need for stable living situations. Building affordable housing could help address housing shortages and provide people with the security, especially when private
all right.
may not be able to keep
Fuck
up.
this, I'm out of here.
This perspective emphasizes the importance of prioritizing community welfare and ensuring that everyone has access to safe and affordable